Well, welcome to the road trip point of view camera, and I'm going to be looking at you, and I'm also going to be looking at the camera because I found a way to actually do a car review with just my own equipment. Don't have to go and bug my buddies and get them away from camping trips, and I figured out I could probably pull this off in a lot less time than I normally do. And if you've been watching the Road Trip channel, you know that sometimes my reviews get a little bit on the long side. So I'm going to try to mash it all together for you today. So welcome to the Poor Man's Point of View. And today on the Poor Man's Point of View, we have the Kia Soul. Now, just to explain exactly which Kia Soul we're looking at here, this is a vehicle sold in Canada as the SX Luxury Edition. Now, this is the top line in Canada for the Souls, and well, there's a lot here to inspire your soul, but let's start under the hood, and let's head on in. Can't believe how well this is working. Well, I haven't dropped anything important yet. Now, let's take a look at the mill here. Now, the one thing I want to tell you is that when it comes to mills, you've got a 1.6 liter available as the base engine with the Soul. The engine that you want is this one right here. This is the gasoline direct injected 2 liter. And because I have the specs handy, we have 164 horsepower and 151 foot-pounds of torque. That's going to be plenty for the requirements of the Soul. I do find that the 1.6 is a little bit on the anemic side when it comes to torque, 118 foot-pounds as memory serves. That's not enough if you're actually going to want to use this vehicle in respect to cargo carrying capability as well as putting your mountain bike on it. You need to have that extra reserve power. Now, as for under the hood, it's actually quite well finished. We even have, well, something resembling a little bit of under-hood insulation, and it's a dual strut type of setup here. So we don't have the concerns of a prop rod to worry about. That's getting to be a bit of a high-end thing here. Now, if you take a look at the headlamps up front, you do have the capabilities of the LED brows, so a very signature looking thing for the SX Luxury. Now, down low, if you take a look at the fog lamps, this is actually evoking a lot of the images of the Trackster concept, a vehicle that I certainly was enamored with. And, well, I guess this is about as close as production as we're going to get to that particular one. So, as for the rest of the engine underneath, well, as expected, there's going to be a few tight points here. You do have the accessory belt drive that's jammed in there pretty darn good, but it's not like you're replacing that every 20,000 kilometers either. Now, I noticed on the initial walk around here that we do have these crash elements on the hood, of course, to keep the hood from tunneling into you. Now, in respect to the crash test, you do have a NHTSA 5-star rating for the Kia Soul currently, and there is a top safety pick from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, but that top safety pick is not the top safety pick plus. I haven't seen yet the small overlap test for the Kia Soul. Let's close in on that lamp there. Check out those LED repeaters. That's pretty darn classy. Now, this one has the keyless entry with the push button start, so that's why we have the tabs on the door panels here. Door panels, well, handle attached to the panel. That's almost right, and I don't feel like editing that out. Let's head over to the A-pillars, and they've actually done a little bit of work to the A-pillars for 2014 model year. There's a lot of sculpting here that's kind of hard to tell just by the casual glance, but the entire vehicle has received a little bit of a lengthening, a little bit of a widening. The roof has actually been brought down a little bit, and still pretty much following the design elements of the previous Soul, but at the same time, you know, still hamster cool fresh, I guess is the best way to describe it. Now, when we take a look inside, if you take a look on the door panels here, there's been a lot of attention to detail, a lot more soft touch material on these door panels. Piano black, well, there's an awful lot of piano black, and the one thing I want to tell you about piano black, and make sure you're aware of this, is that It's kind of like a stainless steel fridge. It's something that looks great for the most part until you actually consider touching it. And then, well, make sure you got some microfibers on hand to keep it looking slick. The flying saucer motif for the speakers continues here on the tweeters. You take a look at that subwoofer up front on the dashboard there, and wow, it almost looks as though it could actually double duty as a turntable. The glove box, this is actually one of the largest glove boxes that I've seen in the segment. And if you take a look on the inside, you actually have the abilities for additional cooling fed from the HVAC. And the glove box door has something of a pocket, plus a place to put your pen or your tire gauge, which not enough people actually carry around with them. Let me just take one other look inside here. Now the console, we don't have any additional power on the inside of that particular lid, and doesn't appear to have any form of cable pass-throughs either. The dual cup holders, well, they do the job. There's no cinchers, but they have good depth. Now, getting back to that piano black on top of the 6-speed automatic shifter, the one thing that I actually noticed is the top of that can get pretty hot in the summertime, so keep that in mind. Now, if you take a look inside here, where I've got the BlackBerry parked, there are two 12-volt DC plug-in points. You do have 120 watt on one side, 180 watt on the other. There's also auxiliary inputs as well as USB. Now let me just take a look over here in the back and kind of give you a feel for exactly what type of space and practicality we get here. Now both of the back doors get the bottle holders incorporated in. Now this being the SX Luxury Edition, not only do you have front heated seats as well as ventilated heated seats, you've got rear heated seats here. So that's right there, easy to find on the door panel. Again, the piano black finishing, very slick. We do have one mesh style of pocket on the inside here, and there's also a flip down armrest with two cup holders of good depth. Now if I take a look up top here, we also have, let's see if I can get both of us. Well, as you can see, you do have the roof rail, so if you do want to actually add something in later on in respect to any form of racking system, possibly put your bike up there. Now, as we head to the rear of the vehicle, the one thing that has actually occurred here is a little bit more storage space. Not a heck of a lot, but there is a little bit more here. It's well finished up top. This is important, very important in Canada, is to have that pull down so you're not getting yourself all mucked up when you're bringing the hatch lid down. A lot of piano black here, again evoking images of that Trackster concept vehicle. Boy, I wish they would bring that to market. Now let me just show you the biscuit here. This is the styrofoam biscuit that actually fits underneath your cargo floor. I've put some stuff in it to show you exactly how much it actually holds. And this can actually be removed from the cargo area. And what I've done is I've gone inside and I've configured the cargo area floor cover to be at its lowest level. So as you can see, that gives you quite a bit of height on the inside. Now you do have one of the best lit back areas for this type of crossover-ish type of vehicle. You've got your additional infinity speaker pumping out there. And if we head over onto the driver's side, you actually have a removable style of flashlight. So an LED flashlight incorporated in. There's proper tie downs as well as another 12-volt DC plug-in. Now the cargo cover is actually one of the more robust that I've come across. You actually could put stuff on top of there if you needed to. There's the little rubber pieces on the end here, and what that does is it keeps it from rattling against the glass. So you can move that out of the way if needed. And if we take a look around the other side here, and actually before we do, I do want to point out that there's a touchpad up top here for releasing the hatch on this X Luxury. There's also the wraparound halo style of LED tail lamps, definitely a signature touch. And with most Kia things, we do come across the beautiful finish of the wheels. So you've got that machine face look with the painted inserts. This is definitely going to get people's attention, whether you're pulling up to cheap night at the movies or at the funky club. Now again, on the inside of the rear seat here, now we only have the mesh pocket on the passenger side. We don't get it on the driver's side. But the one thing that I do like about the way that they've resculpted the interior here is that you actually have quite a bit of room to put your feet underneath those front seats. The one thing you should know about the seats here is that they don't have a recline in the rear. What you see is what you get when it comes to the interior comfort. Now, heading up to the driver's seat, and the one thing that I have noticed here is that we do have on the driver's side controls, we do have the auto up and down. Let's make sure it's auto up and down. Well, that's definitely auto down and auto up. So you get auto up and down for the front panes, and you also have power folding mirrors on this particular unit. And that's definitely not expected for the dollar. Now, there's a good sized pockets up front here for your bottles. The SX Luxury Edition that we're driving here, it does have the power driver's seat with the power lumbar. The seats have actually been redesigned, so a lot more support when it comes to the lumbar, especially when you're going to be throwing this vehicle around. Now, if we take a look inside at the steering wheel, you'll notice that they've done a very good job of incorporating all of the necessary bits and pieces for a high-end vehicle. So not only do we have the audio controls, we have the cruise controls, we have the flex steer. If you take a look at that, that's on the right-hand side there, that little steering wheel button. And when you press that, that gives you the abilities to have normal comfort or sports style of steering feel. And they've actually revised the steering setup on the Kia Soul to assist with that. The auto headlamp setting, definitely appreciated. Tilt and the telescoping style of wheel. We also get the heated steering wheel. Take a look at that switch down low. Heated steering wheel on this particular Kia Soul. The push-button engine start, the 6-speed automatic with the manual gate. There's no paddles on this particular setup. The instrument panel also does have what they call the supervision clusters, so it's very easy to see exactly what it is that you're looking for when it comes to driver's information. Now take a look at this topper here over the instrument panel. There's even a bit of cut and sewn when it comes to the interior on the Kia Soul. And the other thing you should know is that there's quite a bit of soft touch material. Even the dash topper itself has been treated quite well when it comes to that regard. And, well, the color, well, I don't know exactly what we say about this particular solar yellow. I know that I have seen it on a hot dog at some point, probably at one of the Canadian exhibitions. Okay, well, if everyone can see me, I guess I'll just do the old two-shot thing again here. So let's see. The visors, they are of the vanity mirror style variety. They do slide. There is lights. There is an overhead sunglass holder. We do have some really slick LED lighting inside here. It's auto-dimming interior mirror for the SX Luxury. That's definitely appreciated. Do we have a card holder here? Yeah, we actually do have little card holders on the visors. The wheel is new. It's a little bit thicker, and as we've already pointed out to you, it's actually doing quite well when it comes to the placement of the switches. As mentioned, there's an awful lot of piano black here that you need to be aware of. Now, the navigation screen, it's actually quite crisp, very nice mapping, very good font. That is important, and finding all the different things that you need to in respect to navigation as well as information, and there's also
please say a command after the beep.
There's also voice prompts going on.
You spoke too soon. Please try your command again after the beep.
Well, I'm trying to talk to you, but I'm also trying to talk to the camera at the same time, so I mean, can you just give me a second on that?
Sorry, I didn't understand you. Please try your command again after the beep.
Music.
Now listening to the most recent music mode.
Oh, the most recent music mode. I don't know exactly what that means. Oh, what exactly is this? Let's see if we actually have some volume there.
I'm as mad as hell,
Oh.
and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Found my phone ringer. Okay. Oh, copyright music. Better turn that down. Okay. Well, we're underway here in the Kia Soul, and this is the point where I'm not going to be looking at you because there's this thing called the roadway. I know some other auto journalists thinks it's smart and savvy to be looking at you while they're supposed to be looking at the wheel, but I actually want to be doing this next week, so I'm not going to do that. Now, the one thing I've certainly mentioned already, and it really comes to bear when you actually start driving this particular Kia Soul, is the 2-liter with the 6-speed automatic. Now, the one thing that should be noted here, and I was going through the specs on it, now the numbers aren't big, but when we talk about that 2-liter and the improvements that have been made, what actually happens is that the torque occurs at a lower RPM. So the good news is you're going to get more grunt at lower RPM, which is exactly what you want when you want to be accelerating. Now we're just doing a residential drive right now, so as we do that, feel free to take a look around the cabin. The one thing that I think could definitely be changed, as I had pointed out earlier, is the this piano black on top of the shifter. It gets awfully hot in the summertime. Now, you're probably noticing we have pretty good lighting, considering that there's no one in the vehicle doing the lighting right now. And new for 2014 is the panoramic overhead sunroof. So not only do you have it in the rear seats, but you also have the movable pane up front. And not that I want to be a pain, but let's just show you exactly how much pain we're talking about here. And in addition to having that, you also have the sunscreen that we're not going to put in right now because we actually want to have a little bit of light to show you what we're doing here. The one thing that I noticed up top, though, is that it does have the mesh style of deflector. Really good if you want to stock up on your bug collection, so keep that in mind. Let's close that so we don't have too much ambient noise here to disturb the road trip point of view review. Now that gives you an idea of exactly what they've done here in respect to the noise vibration harshness. A lot of vehicles up until this point, keeping things quiet actually meant that they were putting hard pieces of foam into certain panels. Well, what they've actually started doing now with the Kia Soul is they're starting to inject the foam. So the nice thing about that is it gets into all those nooks and crannies around the vehicle that normally would have been an issue when it comes to the air rushing past it. So it's definitely one of the quieter setups that we've seen for a vehicle in this class. Now in Canada, the Kia Soul starts at $16,995. But remember, that gets you a 6-speed manual, no AC, and also that 1.6 liter, which is right anemic for the needs of this vehicle. I wouldn't recommend it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this out to a little bit of a highway acceleration run, just to give you a feel as to the type of noises that you're going to be experiencing with the driveline on this particular setup. It's by no means what I would call buzzy. In fact, at cruising speeds right now, and I'm just using the internal microphones on this particular Canon camera, which are quite good, the Vixia Mini X, in case you're wondering. The actual road noise of this particular vehicle, there's very little that's actually transferring through. There's been a lot that's been done in respect to the structural rigidity of the vehicle. The rear suspension has actually been revamped in respect to the placement of the shocks. Still a torsion beam type of setup in the rear. But the other thing too with this flex steer system, I found sometimes on Kia flex steer systems that they feel a little disembodied. Now right now, if I press that button, I've actually still got it in sport, which in my opinion is where you should leave these things for the extent of the warranty. So here we are, we're pulling up, and we are going to be accelerating to 60 kilometers an hour when it's right safe to do so. And away we go. Did I say 60? I meant 100K. Okay, so that brings us up to 110. Just back it down a little bit to 100. Now, I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this type of engine and this type of class to have something resembling a pleasing note. That's a good sounding note for a 2-liter. Now, this is the gasoline direct injected 2-liter. So the one thing too that I find with the way that this transmission is set up is that even though I'm not in a big hurry to use the manual gate down low, it seems to have some sensibilities in respect to the algorithm when it's shifting, when it's downshifting. In fact, yeah, we can give you a little downshift. We're only doing 90 right now. Okay, so here we are, passing gear. So that's the type of tone that you're going to be dealing with. Take it up to $120, back her down. Okay. Now, and remember, we're using just the microphones that are in this particular Canon Vixia Mini X. So what you're hearing on a not too windy, blustery day in the lovely city of Winnipeg is the type of interior noise that you would be experiencing. And realistically, it's probably going to be a little bit more subdued from the microphone level that you're hearing now. Now, when it comes to what you do hear inside, you do have the Infinity audio system. It has all the speakers you could ever hope for. But, you know, when it comes to the type of music you want to put through here, I have noticed that you're going to get the best quality sound out of the things that you bring into vehicles, such as your digital files in your iPod, your CDs. When it comes to the actual SXM, Sirius XM radio transmissions, didn't exactly find it to be pumping things too hard when it came to the volume level. But of course, we want to make sure that we're actually paying attention to the road. And we are. Okay. Now, I have to admit, when it comes to the steering, the revisions that they've made here, the steering gear, it used to be a 2-piece setup, now it's a 1-piece setup. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, you get a much better on-center feel. Okay, what does that mean to you? It feels like the steering wheel is actually connected to something mechanical as opposed to the electrical. So it has a proper hydraulic type of feel. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. I really do like the driving position. The seats have actually excellent support. Something that I definitely find wanting with a lot of vehicles in the segment. So definitely something to keep in mind. When it comes to the bolstering, the one thing that you should know is it's not over bolstered. So we're not talking about something that's trying to pull a poor man's Recaro here. There's definitely enough here to keep you in the seats when it comes to, say, spirited on or off-ramp maneuvers. Is it something you're going to take to track day? Probably not. But as we'd mentioned already, there's a lot of the trackster cues that are occurring on the inside as well as the outside of the Kia Soul for 2014. Now, here's the thing. When we actually start putting the dollars together here, now as mentioned, we're starting at $16,995 for the Kia Soul in Canada. Now, when we get into the SX level, and this is the SX Luxury, this is as high as you can possibly take this particular Kia Soul. So now we're actually dipping into the 27s. That's right, over $27,000 is what you're going to be dealing with for an MSRP here. But I think I figured out exactly who this car is trying to appeal to. Because when you take a look around at the funky factor that exists not only on the exterior but well as the interior, the one thing that I have to tell you is that I think that the prime competitor for something like this is the Mini Cooper. Now, when you think about all the derivatives of the Mini in respect to things like Countryman and such, they certainly have a very cool, retro, funky factor going on. But what they also have, especially if you've actually started pricing out anything from the Mini Camp, is they get very fat in the MSRP when you actually start putting on the most wanted equipment. So when you talk 27,000 and change for something like this particular Kia Soul, you have to remember that what you're actually getting is at 27,000 something that you simply couldn't touch for equipment on a Mini Cooper. So keep that in mind when you're taking a look at vehicles in the segment. Now, as we pull up to the red lamp here, I'm going to get the exact price for you, because that is the way I roll. Okay, $27,195, and that is for the SX Automatic Luxury in the solar yellow. Okay, not too bad. Oh, let's take a look at the numbers here. Let's see, we've got 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers in the highway. So that translates to 32 miles per gallon city, imperial gallon of course, 43 miles per gallon highway. What does that mean in respect to real world numbers? Well, I've been averaging with a combination of highway as well as city over the last week driving this car, easily hitting around the 9.5 liter to 100 kilometer mark, tending to be more around the 10 and a half, depending on how aggressive I am with the throttle inputs for the Kia Soul. Now, the reality is that I think you're going to do quite well for achieving the actual numbers when it comes to the Kia Soul if you're driving it like a human being. Because what you also have with the Kia Soul is the active eco switch, and that's below your auto climate controls. Now, the active eco, it's going to do everything it can to adjust the necessary algorithms that are going to help you when it comes to economy. But the numbers that I just quoted for you, those numbers are not with the active eco setting on. Now, in my conversations with Kia as well as Hyundai, because I mean they are kissing cousins, you can actually get yourself into a situation, and a good situation, I think, where you're going to be bettering those numbers possibly by as much as 7%. So those are definitely numbers that you don't want to be sneezing at. Now, if this gentleman would realize that the light is green, thank you, gentleman, who has just realized the light is green. I'm just about home, by the way. Now, which Soul should you be thinking about? Which Soul makes the most sense? Now, when it comes to the base, which is the LX in Canada, again, that 1.6 liter really concerns me. It's simply not enough torque. I mean, that's hardly enough torque to move a base Fiesta. Go and put it into something like this, and you're simply going to run out of engine way too fast. Now, if you get the 2 liter, and you're saying to yourself, well, I want the 2 liter, but I don't want to have to go to the added expense, or maybe you're not necessarily one of those people who want to have every possible type of system inside their vehicle, whether or not you need navigation or things like that. But the one that really speaks to me for just under $21,000 is the EX trim. Now, you can get that, well, actually, EX only gives you the 2 liter gasoline direct injected mills. So that would be my choice And remembering too that there's all the other derivatives and packages that you can get with a Kia Soul for 2014. I mean, you can make it as subdued or as loud as you want when it comes to the exterior as well as the interior trimmings. But I would have to say that the EX would probably be the one that I would consider for the dough. Now, when you're thinking around that kind of MSRP and you start looking around as to what's out there with the practicality factors, I mean, how much room do you actually have to haul when you start looking at some of the other vehicles out there? And some of them are, well, maybe crossover-ish in nature, but I would say that the reality is, well, a little different, especially when you start thinking about vehicles such as the Nissan Juke. I do find that to be terribly small for what it can actually do for you. Is there anything else that I would possibly consider at this particular price bracket? Well, it opens up a lot in respect to other vehicles such as 5-door hatches. But for something that's actually wagon-esque, I have to admit there's really not a heck of a lot out there. And when you start looking at the price factors that occur here, not to mention the fact that this is a vehicle that has done ridiculously well with all sorts of types of awards. Everything from whether or not people actually like it after the first 90 days of driving it, to the residual values that you could be experiencing down the road if you actually think that this is something that you'd want to sell off. But for the money, again, EX trim is definitely where I'd want to be. The other possibilities here for other vehicles for this type of money, well, that's probably why people are just so darn happy with it, because really, in a mainstream manufacturer's sense, there's not a heck of a lot out there that's kind of close. About the only thing that really comes to mind automatically is something, well, let's think about this. Kia Rondo, even, if you're looking for something that kind of has the practicality factor, plus the availability of 3 rows, you're looking very close in and around the same type of money. The other thing that you may want to consider would be something like the Honda Fit, which has been completely rethought for 2015. Hopefully going to do a lot better when it comes to that small overlap test from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. What else would I consider for the money? Well, there's just not really anything else for this price that's going to give you the funk factor. So you really have to put that into your considerations here. And if the funk factor isn't important to you, there's a lot of other vehicles that could definitely fit the bill, give you these types of panoramic roofs and racking abilities, and also unique cargo configurations. Well, that was a drive in the Kia Soul. And I hope you like this new style of concept for showing off exactly how these vehicles do and how they perform. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or feelings about anything automotive, you can always send me an email at steelbeltedmind@gmail.com. I'm Michael Clark. Keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down.